It's going to be an interesting offseason to be sure because Soto is such a young free agent, really the youngest elite free agent since A-Rod.
Talk about anyone else besides Judge or Ohtani when you're displaying candidates for an MVP race.
Scott, if it's a day that ends in Y, I'm getting crap from fans. So it's nothing unusual. And the Yankee fan thing with Bobby Witt Jr. has been particularly loud, at least in what I'm getting. And I don't care. They can say whatever they want. Bobby Witt Jr. is a great player. He just happens not to play for their team. So they can't understand exactly, not all of them, but a lot of them, why this is even a question. And frankly, if Judge has another historic season, as he is having, it probably will not be a question. But to diminish Bobby Witt Jr. because Aaron Judge is having this amazing year when Bobby Witt Jr. is having a different kind of amazing year, that's ridiculous. And I understand fans, they're going to root for their team. They're going to want their team prominent, of course. But at the same time, you might want to take a little step back and look at the whole sport too. And what the guy in Kansas City is doing every day, it's not a home run every day, but it's a home run a lot. And he is a remarkable defensive player as well. So keep the crap coming. I'm going to keep talking about him.
Okay, Ken, I got three things for you. One, what day doesn't end in Y?
No day, AJ. That's what I'm saying. If
okay, good.
That ends
just
in
checking.
Y, I'm getting crap.
Just making sure. Okay, just so you know that. Okay. Two, Yankees fans. If you don't play for the Yankees, there are no other teams. You should know this by now. You've been
Most
making
fans
baseball
are like
come
that,
alive.
actually, but Yankee fans are on certain issues in particular. Yes.
Yes, you've been making baseball come alive for a long time. And then thirdly, Ken, is the race that close? Because I mean, listen, I'm a Bobby Witt fan. I love Bobby Witt Jr. But with what Aaron Judge is doing, and I'm not a Yankees fan. If anything, you could almost call me a Royals fan more because I'm a Central guy most of my career. But is it even that close? I mean, I know we're trying to hype it up. It's kind of like Judge, and then Bobby Witt's having an unbelievable year. But Judge has done so much that I mean, you see the game last night. He's robbing home runs, doubling dudes off at first and center field. I mean, to me, I get the clamoring, but I just don't see it being that close. I'm sorry, and I love Bobby Witt Jr.
AJ, no one's trying to hype it up. I think this is really a conversation that stems from the fact that the Royals are doing something they haven't done in a long time, make a playoff push. Bobby Witt is in the center of it all. He is one of the elite defensive shortstops in the game, where Judge, last night aside, is not one of the elite defensive center fielders in the game. So it's a conversation. It's a conversation that when you break it down, it's pretty clearly Judge at this point. But at the same time, Bobby Witt, if you just look at wins above replacement, he's going to have probably a 10-win season. Obviously, Judge will be above him. A 10-win season is pretty amazing. And that's why this is even something people are talking about. He plays an elite up-the-middle position like Judge, and he plays it at an extremely high level. He does things offensively, basically everything you would want. So, yeah, he is going to be top 5, probably top 2. And all I'm saying here is you can acknowledge the greatness of one and acknowledge the greatness of others. If we have enough space in our brains, we should be able to do that. That's all I'm saying.
I don't have a lot of space in my brain, but I want to talk about the greatness of Lindor this year. Before we get to who might be the judge, but I think this is a closer race, but hit a little bit on the greatness of what Lindor is doing for this Mets team this year.
Lindor is kind of the National League equivalent of Bobby Witt Jr. Maybe not quite as electric, but it's the same kind of argument that is taking place here. Now, Ohtani does not play defense at all, and that's something I'm actually going to write about for tomorrow, this idea of an MVP winning without playing defense. Is that something we should be looking at, etc.? But you're asking me about Lindor. And Lindor has done some great things this year, especially since about, mid-May, when he really took off. And he's been a leader for that team. He has been a stalwart offensively, defensively, left side, right side of the plate, in the clutch at times, not always. And he is a guy that is proving to be worth that contract. And a lot of people have questioned this, saying Francisco Lindor is not that player. He actually has been that player for them. And it kind of gets overlooked partly because he gets off to these slow starts, but at the same time, what he is doing for them, and if he drags them into a playoff spot the way Bobby Witt Jr. is dragging his team into a playoff spot, it might be a different conversation with regard to MVP. I'm not sure. We'll have to see how Ohtani finishes. And it's essentially the same discussion. If Ohtani puts himself so far out there, historically, 45-45, 50-50 possibly, then he is most likely going to be the MVP. But there is some question about, hey, do you want to give it to a pure DH? And that's what he is this season. He's not pitching. He is a pure DH.
I'll go to some teams now, Ken. I think the Kansas City Royals are making enough noise for us to talk about them yet again. I mean, they have a very legit shot of winning this division, this AL Central. Did you see this coming? And I believe that you wrote about the Royals in spring training too, but if you just want to enlighten us on what you've observed from this team, from their offseason aggressiveness all the way through their trade deadline wins to now. And I guess the last layer for me is how they continue to be such a great contact team, while there are some people that are like, contact doesn't matter anymore.
Actually, Scott, it was my first column of spring training, my first stop. It was Kansas City in Surprise, Arizona, and I was curious about writing about them because of what they had done in the offseason, bringing in Lugo and Waka and even Will Smith and some others as well. No one knew that this was going to happen the way it did. In fact, at the time, I can't recall exactly what my words were, but I'm sure I was exercising some degree of healthy skepticism, because you have to prove it before you can actually be considered a playoff type team, and they have. I thought what they did in the offseason in stabilizing the rotation and to some extent the bullpen, though they needed to fix that later, was a really positive step forward. And of course, the Witt Jr. extension as well is something that they did last offseason that offered them a measure of stability that really a lot of low revenue teams don't have, a superstar player signed long term. So at the deadline, they needed bullpen help, and they went out and got it. And Urseg has been amazing for them. Absolutely amazing. I don't believe he's allowed a run yet. They are a team that, yes, it's a contact-oriented group. It's not a particularly flashy group in terms of star power, name power outside of Witt Jr., but they are getting it done, and Matt Cotraro, their manager, has done a terrific job as well. I don't know if they're going to beat the Guardians. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Central plays out, but the Royals set out, or have done what they set out to do, and that was to contend. And again, can they sustain it? Will Lugo have this kind of season next year and all of these things? I don't know, but Brady Singer's taken a step forward. They have had a lot of good things happen, and they have made a lot of good things happen. So credit to them.
Ken, talking about the Royals here, you never thought we'd be doing that. But let me ask you this. In the same division, is the AL Central the best division in baseball? 4 teams at 500 or better? Can you name – there's one other division. Can you name the other division?
No, I can't.
And time's up.
NL West, I would think.
NL West. Yeah, but you ran out of time. Okay. Too bad, Ken.
But
to answer the AL Central, AJ, AL Central is probably going to get 3 teams in, just like the NL West is.
Yes.
This team is surprising, or this division is surprisingly good.
I'm going to bring this back to the MVP conversation because it's interesting. One of the arguments that you'll hear from Yankee fans about Bobby Witt Jr., and yes, I've heard it, so don't say it's not there, is that the AL Central's weak. It stinks. Bobby Witt Jr. plays in the AL Central. It's as dumb an argument as Aaron Judge could only hit home runs in Yankee Stadium. That's an argument I hear from other people. And Judge is about even split. I think it's 26 on the road, 25 at home. But as for the Central, yes. And you look at the Tigers there. They are maybe the surprise. They've played really well in the last few weeks, and here they are at 500. You likely will have 3 playoff teams from this division unless Seattle gets really hot. And it's a credit to each of their plans. Cleveland, I hated their offseason. They did nothing. They took a step back, essentially, and did not spend much money. They made some moves around the edges, but it wasn't much. And yet they transformed their offense, and here they are. Their starting pitching is still really problematic. I don't know that they addressed it as fully as they should have with Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd, but they're right there. Kansas City, we've discussed. Minnesota, terrific young team in some ways. They have some really impressive young players, and they've got some superstars as well, one of whom, Carlos Correa, remains out. So I love what they do, and they too have had some good things happen on the pitching front with Ober and Woods Richardson all around. So it's a good race for starters. And yes, it's a division that does not deserve to be discredited as much as it has been, even with the White Sox in it and those teams benefiting from playing the White Sox.
The only reason AJ asked that is because he wants to make sure everybody knows the White Sox aren't as bad as it's just a really tough division, so they're not. That's
No,
why he's
they're
saying.
bad.
Well, they're worse. They're actually
Oh, they're
worse
bad.
than that. They're actually worse than they're worse. But think about if it was the 19 games where the Twins could be 18-1 against them, the Royals could be 18-1 against them, the Tigers are 9-1. They could be, wow. And then the Guardians. That's the difference in the division. The Guardians are 5-5 right now.
That's right. Not good.
Well, let's go to the East. Let's go to the AL East. Is
Okay.
all that Judge is doing overshadowing Soto in his walk year? I get it. Soto will get his money, but in the sense of, is it overshadowing him enough that if the Yankees and another team pay the same amount of money, maybe Soto wants to be his own man somewhere else?
Ooh, that's tough to say. I don't know the answer to that. I would say it's overshadowing it to an extent, but we all know, those of us who follow this, most fans, what Juan Soto is doing. And that what he is doing is pretty remarkable in its own right. He right now would be third on my AL MVP ballot. He has a career high in home runs. This is one of his best seasons. He's improved his defense, though it's still not going to be his calling card. And with regard to the question about the Yankees versus another team, he definitely sees the value of being in the same lineup as Aaron Judge. Now, will that determine where he goes? Absolutely not. What is going to determine where he goes is who makes the highest offer, which team makes the highest offer. That's what this free agency is all about, and that's where it's going. So it's going to be an interesting offseason to be sure, because Soto is such a young free agent, really the youngest elite free agent since A-Rod, going all the way back a quarter century. And that's going to make it quite an interesting affair.
Ken, quick follow-up on this. Do the Yankees have more of a policy of letting players go to free agency and testing the water so that they don't kind of outbid themselves during a process with a player? I mean, they did this with Judge. You can make a strong case that if they don't get Soto back on a long-term deal, Yankee fans are going to lose their mind based on how good he's been, the connection, the whole deal. So I'm just wondering if that's a policy with a team like the Yankees or even some bigger market teams so they don't outbid themselves. It seems like the Mets have done that at times with players as well. What do you think?
They have signed certain players to extensions over the years. Severino stands out as one. Now, he was an arbitration eligible player at that point, not what you're talking about, a guy in his fifth year. It's tough to sign guys once they're in their fifth year, and that's where Soto is right now. If you remember with Cano, they made him an offer, if I'm not mistaken, but it wasn't the offer he wanted, and he left. So I don't believe they have a set policy against it, and in fact, they have made offers to Soto. At least that's what's been reported. So clearly, they are willing to do this. But if you're Juan Soto and you've already turned down $440 million over 15 years from the Nationals a few years back, you know where the market's going. And you know that in an openly competitive environment, which is exactly what free agency is, you're going to do better than just having one team bid.
Great deal. But I'm not going to run sprints in the outfield just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. With Mint Mobile, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan. Purchase and activation is super easy too.
To get started, go to mintmobile.com/territory. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on their first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Ken, before you go, I have to ask you this because we talked about it a lot yesterday. It was kind of a big story from the weekend. The Montgomery, Snell, Scott Boras back and forth that's kind of going on. Monty kind of blasted Boras. Snell stood up for Boras. Obviously, Monty left Boras. Snell's sticking with him. Boras hasn't really commented back, but there's obviously some things we don't know on either side. Is this a big deal, or are we just trying to make more out of it since Montgomery, who was one of the best pitchers last year, now is in the bullpen and is saying these things, or is this just something that happens on a day-to-day basis?
I wouldn't say it happens on a day-to-day basis because it was quite unusual to see a two-time Cy Young winner out there as long as he was, and even Jordan Montgomery, a World Series hero, out there as long as he was. I don't know that we're making too big a deal of it. Jordan Montgomery said what he did. Then Andrew Baggerly of The Athletic went to Snell and asked for his response, and Snell gave his response. Different people have different opinions, often. Montgomery feels that Boras botched his free agency. Snell feels that Boras did not. And they've made decisions along those lines. Montgomery left, as you said, AJ, and Snell stayed. The real test will come this offseason because if Snell gets the deal that he ultimately wants, then it's all going to be okay. He got $30 million this year, a high AAV, and ultimately, let's say it's, I don't know, 180, whatever the number might be, then everything will be fine in his world. That's the test, though. And Scott Boras has an amazing class of free agents this year. It's one of his best. It goes back to the quality of 2019 when he had Cole and Strasburg and Rendon. This year, it's Soto, Alonso, Burns, Bregman, Snell, Chapman, and Bellinger if they opt out. And I'm probably missing a few. So it's going to be a big winter for him. And yes, with those particular players, the ones who were part of the Boras four and didn't get what we thought they were going to get, I feel really confident that he's going to do better. Chapman's having a better year. Snell's having a better year. Bellinger probably just okay, but he's still a guy that teams are going to want if he indeed decides to opt out.
Snell having a better year? He won the Cy Young. He's not winning the Cy Young this year.
Well, I shouldn't say better year. He's come around now. He's having a better second half.
Just call me the Ken fact. Call me the Ken fact checker from now on. Thank you.
I misspoke.
He's been great lately. He's going to opt out.
No, obviously. But that leads to my next question. I know we got to go, but will Monty opt out or will he? Because his contract, I mean, that's like, is he going to? I know he's come out and kind of says he wants to pitch in different places, a different place, but like that's a weird one to me because will he opt out? And because he's got a lot on the table to say yes to that player option. So will he opt in and then say Diamondbacks trade me?
I don't know that he will do that. He may opt in and say, okay, not a great year. I'm going to have a better year with the Diamondbacks next year and then go back in the market and see if I can make up what I lost. That would be my expectation. But given the demand for starting pitching, perhaps he sees it differently because the way to calculate this, or at least one way to look at it, is his guarantee for next year, I think, will be $25 million, maybe a little bit more based on some escalators. Can he beat $25 million in the open market? The answer to that probably is yes. Can he beat it with a deal that he would want as opposed to a deal coming off a better year next year? That's the question. And I don't know off the top of my head how old he is exactly. I believe it's 31 this year. So age becomes a concern too. It's going to be an interesting decision for him. I would not be surprised to see him opt in, though.
Yeah, he turns 32 years old already in December. So if he does one more year, now you're going into your age 33 season at that point. And yeah, the escalators were complicated. I think he's currently at 20, in the 20s, and then he's short of those starts to get to the next number. And that's not why he's in the bullpen. But anyway, interesting case, which we can get to in the offseason as well. Ken, thank you very much.
Snell for dismissing his Cy Young year last year, and I apologize to AJ for blundering there.
AJ's never made a mistake, Ken, so he's just
trying
to
make plenty of mistakes, trust me. I make plenty of mistakes. That is not a problem.
He's just trying to make sure everyone's perfect. Ken, you're the best. Thank you. We'll see you on Fair Territory on Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.